When I was 6 or 7, I remember being in the car with my dad after one of his long talks about his childhood. And I looked at him and I said, Nana, because that's father in Telugu. I said, if you became famous one day, you'd have a really cool book written about you. And instead of brushing it off or laughing, he looked at me and he said, will you become famous? And then they can write about me in the book. This was around the time that I realized my parents expected the absolute most from me. But it was also the realization that came with it, that I may never be able to give that to them. Growing up in a household with two of the smartest people as my parents has been an experience. My dad is a chemical engineer and the hardest worker I know. Ever since I was little, he's made it clear that he wants me to be more successful than he is. My mom is an electrical engineer and also the hardest worker I know, with an endless supply of support for our family. Without her, we'd be nowhere. My brother is 4 years older than me and a senior at UCLA, as well as a constant reminder of everything I should be in basically every aspect of my life. This past summer, he interned at the Jet Propulsion Labs at NASA, so there's really no pressure there. I come from a family of engineers. My mom is an engineer, my dad is an engineer, my brother is an engineer, my aunts and uncles are engineers, my grandpa is an engineer. And to be an engineer, you have to be particularly skilled in math and science. Two subjects that, from a very early age, I thought I was bad at because there was so much I felt I had to live up to. Coming from a family of intelligent engineers, the unspoken message was STEM leads to success. And so when I wasn't abnormally excellent at math or science, I began to doubt who I was. As a junior today, I don't want to go into a STEM field. I want to pursue a career in law, which was initially a shock for my parents since it isn't something that they're used to. But eventually they understood that success can be found in different ways than they found it. But more importantly, I understood that. When I was 11 years old, my dad wanted me to understand the value of money, which is not the lightest lesson for an 11-year-old to understand. So he gave me a project. I had to compile a spreadsheet of all of our monthly expenses as a family. So this included food, taxes, gas, piano lessons, tennis lessons, vacations. You get the idea. I then had to take our monthly expenses and multiply that by 12 to get our annual expenses. From there, I had to look for jobs whose salary fit our annual expenses. And what I found was that all of these jobs required a very high level of education. So from an early age, I understood that in order to enjoy a comfortable life, I had to be just as driven as my parents, which was a scary yet valuable lesson on the pressures of success. Starting in elementary school, pressure became the 8-letter word that lost its meaning because of its constant appearance in my life. When I was in first grade, my teacher had us do these little addition tests. She would hold up a flashcard and we had to do the mental math in our head and say the answer. And it was practically expected of me to be able to do it the fastest. It was expected by my classmates and ultimately by me. Flattery, I suppose, but also this unintentional creation of who I should be. I let this stereotype that as an Asian American, I'm meant to be a gifted student. I let this stereotype define me. The idea that I'm not who I'm supposed to be, that I'm a fraud, has always haunted me. In middle school, there was this club that met after school called Math Counts. And it was really just a bunch of smart kids solving really hard problems. And in middle school, and now, I wouldn't really consider myself to be one of them. But my brother did it, and so I did it. And I wasn't particularly good at it. In 6th and 7th grade, I didn't even make the team. In fact, I got one of the lowest scores, which was extremely humiliating because there was so much expected of me. Math Counts is supposed to increase the students' confidence in math, but it really did the opposite for me. It just made me doubt myself. So in 8th grade, I finally made the team. And when they announced it on the loudspeaker, I started crying, which is so lame and pathetic, but it's not because I was happy. It's because I knew it would make my parents happy. Math, the 4-letter word that has had a chokehold on my life, from the countless afternoons in the kitchen with my dad doing math to get ahead, to the after-school clubs. I've always felt that I've had to prove myself in math because I'm not as good at it as my mom is, or my dad is, or my brother is. And I told myself, I don't like it, because why should I like something that I will never be excellent at? A B ultimately doesn't mean anything, I tell myself. But when I sit down and when I think about it, it makes me feel stupid. Because in my head, a B isn't good enough. A B isn't excellent. Excellence. The 10-letter word that forever haunts my days. Excellence has been expected from my parents, from my brother, from my teachers, my classmates, my peers, and ultimately, excellence has been expected from me. My freshman year, I developed test anxiety. If I knew I had a math test the next day, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't think about anything else until I took the test. And I wouldn't do well. I couldn't figure out how to do well, not because I wasn't prepared, but because rather than solving the linear system, I was thinking about what would happen if I do badly. If I do badly on this test, I won't get an A. I won't get an A in the class. My GPA will go down. Everyone else's will go up. You're not going to get into college now. You're supposed to be smart. Why can't you do this? All of that over a math test. And I would do badly. I couldn't figure out how to do well. I was so scared that maybe I'm just stupid. Maybe I'm not what everyone wants me to be. Then what? Then what am I supposed to do? My first week of sophomore year, I had my first panic attack. I think as an Indian girl, there's this image shoved at me, like you're supposed to be smart and perfect. And if you so much as struggle with anything, you're done. Your brother didn't struggle, why are you struggling? Living in a world like that makes it so that kids like me tend to suppress our emotions because in our heads, it's not as important as our grades. I think in the past, mental health has commonly been ignored. It's always been there, but it's never been talked about. It's never been accepted. Kids have always struggled with mental health, but they've hid those feelings. I think specifically a lot of South Asian kids today feel as if they're the only ones who are suddenly struggling and think that they're less than what they're supposed to be. When in reality, there is nothing wrong with struggling. Luckily, I'm beginning to realize that my parents will love me no matter what. I was fortunate enough to have parents who helped me even when they were dealing with something completely foreign to them. They offered me unconditional support and validated my experience. I think the real issue is self-love, and to transfer the validation that I get from my grades to deeper and more meaningful qualities. This past semester in pre-calc, I got a B+, which was extremely disappointing for the sole reason that math this past year put me through so much in terms of doubting myself. But my math teacher, for the first time in my life, made me feel smart. She made me feel confident. She helped me find ways to deal with my test anxiety. I'm still incredibly disappointed about the B, but I also learned that I like math, and I'm good at it, and I'm allowed to like something that I'm not excellent at. And knowing that and learning that was more valuable than any lesson she could have taught me. While STEM may not be in my future, that does not make my career any less meaningful. I will ultimately be successful because I have support from the people in my life who know I am capable of it. Up until this point in my life, I always thought that I had to live up to someone else's expectations. But the expectations no longer matter because accepting my own goals is more important. Without acceptance, you live under false pretenses. With acceptance comes the freedom to live freely. Acceptance, the 10-letter word that now guides my life.